This month, Gauteng Premier David Makhura delivered the annual State of the Province address in Randfontein in the West Rand region. This venue, the Green Hill Stadium, takes its place in South African history for having hosted the Independent Electoral Commission during the country's first democratic elections in 1994. A few weeks prior to the address, the West Rand Summit was held where Gauteng MECs and other government and private sector officials outlined plans to revitalize the economy of this area.
Today, as the provincial government led by the Premier, working with the municipalities of West Rand, we thought we should come here to have a discussion on how best can we revive the economic fortunes of this region, because it's one of the smallest contributor into the GDP of the province, and there's been a deindustrialization in the last few years, especially here in the West Rand and in City Bay. We want to make sure as the provincial government that all our regions and all our people benefit in the economic fortunes of our province, but we also want to make sure that we build more sustainable businesses and entrepreneurs here who must ultimately be integrated into the mainstream economy.
What plan of action do you have that you have solid going forward?
Well, firstly, we've got an economic development plan in the province, and that economic development plan designate what each region, what we call corridors, must focus on, because every region has got its own comparative advantages, and we want every region to focus on their strength, but to also complement each other. And we've also identified different sectors of the economy that we will be intervening in, and that includes, for instance, manufacturing and beneficiation, mining. This area has been a mining area for many, many years, for instance, and the mining industry has been playing a big role, and it will continue playing a big role in the next 30 years. And what we want to do is to ensure that we look at other associated opportunities to mining that can help to sustain the industry here, but to also facilitate the integration of SMMEs into the mainstream and to also create jobs. You're looking at tourism. This is an area, for instance, where there's the cradle of humankind, which is a strategic asset for the country. It has got huge potential. We want to invest more on it. Issues of creative industries, for instance, it's another opportunity that can be exploited by our people. Issues of manufacturing, as I've said, there are a lot of opportunities, and what we want to do, apart from spending our own resources, which already by now we have spent close to R1 billion just on township entrepreneurs of this region and City Bay, and we want to spend more. But we understand that government intervention alone will not help us to solve the problems that we face, and will not create, because we want to ensure that we create solutions that will help the economy and get the buy-in of big and small business, so that it does not become the sole responsibility of government. That is why today we've got all the big and small businesses present here.
Taking centre stage at the State of the Province address was the progress being made in the current administration's bold plan to transform, modernise and re-industrialise the city region.
We meet at a time when the global and domestic economy has been characterised by sluggish growth over the past 2 years. However, it is heartening to say that the Gauteng provincial economy has remained resilient as the economic industrial hub of South Africa and the SADC region. Gauteng has recorded the largest net gain in new jobs created since the 2008 global financial crisis. Between 2010 and the end of 2016, our provincial economy created more than 700,000 new jobs. Since the start of our fifth administration in 2015 in particular, our provincial economy has created 317,000 jobs and has broken through the ceiling over a biannual basis of less than 300,000 jobs that has been the feature of this economy over the past decade. Honorable members, taking into account the dynamic of job losses in various sectors of our economy, particularly manufacturing and mining, as well as the grueling reality that 42% of all migrants from all over our country come into Gauteng, prefer to come into Gauteng, and this excludes migrants from all over the continent and all over the world. These employment gains are significant, although they are not sufficient to turn the tide of unemployment. They are significant, but not sufficient to turn the tide of unemployment. We know fully well that in order to significantly decrease unemployment, we need to double this number and reach at least 600,000 new jobs over a 2-year period from 2017 until 2019.
Gauteng contributes 33% of South Africa's GDP and about 10% of the total GDP of the African continent. One of the pivotal aims of the plan, known as the TMR strategy, is to target communities that were excluded under the apartheid regime and afford them opportunities and means to now contribute and benefit from Gauteng's economy. Government spend on township economies increased from 600 million in 2014 to 6 billion in 2016.
This represents 22% of the 30% target we have set for 2019. We are emboldened that we will far surpass this 30% not only in 2019, and for this reason, we want now to reach 40% by the end of our term in 2019. The number of township enterprises benefiting from public procurement has increased threefold from 800 in 2014 to more than 2,800 in January 2017. Honorable members, the key question we now have to ask is not whether to empower township enterprises or black businesses or not. The key question is, how do we make this empowerment sustainable beyond government tenders? This is the question we must confront as we give content and character to radical economic transformation as the first pillar of our transformation, modernization, and reindustrialization program. We would like to encourage all big businesses to support township enterprises. Having achieved the above, we are now moving towards the second wave of empowerment, which will ensure that black businesses and township enterprises that we are empowering now become more sustainable by participating in other sectors of the economy, because 80% of our economy is in the private sector.
The Gauteng Provincial Legislature allows citizens to participate in lawmaking and oversight processes. The body has focused its lens on monitoring the promises made by government and advocating for the rights of citizens.
I was expecting the Premier to tell us as to the promises that he has made since 2014, what has he done about them, but also in terms of what will he be focusing on in this particular year, but also in the years to come, 2 years to come, before the end of our term. So I'm extremely happy, but what we need to be focusing on now as the provincial legislature is to keep on checking whether those commitments are being implemented, and that we will do on a quarterly basis, as the Premier will be coming to account to the OCPOL committee, but also on an annual basis as he will be coming to commit or even report to the House in terms of those commitments.
Which are the most pertinent commitments that the GPL will have a keen focus on or keen eye on in the next 2 years?
Well, for me, the program for women, in particular our young women, because they're one of those vulnerable groups, but also as we are all aware that recently with the problem of life accident, I want to know exactly what the Premier is going to do, because firstly we have not received as the legislature a report from the Ombudsman. So we will be requesting that report ourselves, because it is in the Act. The Ombudsman must actually also bring the report to the GPL, and we are going to actually table that report in the relevant committee and follow up in terms of the implementation of that particular report. So I am actually interested, but also what is going to be done with our young people, because in our province we are a young province. 52% of our people are young people. So I'm also interested, because in our communities, as we visit them as different public representatives, we're always confronted with the problem of either unskilled young people or young people that are unemployed. So basically, in terms of the program that is putting in place, all what I'm asking is the implementation from our officials.
What is the legislature's mandate for the next 2 years?
Oversight is one of them, because it's in the Constitution. Public participation is another, but also doing oversight work is one of our program, but also cooperative governance. But I'm happy because the Premier, in whatever he has outlined, he doesn't leave local government outside of the process. Therefore, it is important, because there's no provincial space. The space where we implement our programs is in local communities, and those local communities are led by municipalities.
In order to physically and economically include previously disadvantaged communities in the Gauteng city region's economy, billions of rands are being spent on all areas such as infrastructure, health, education, transport and housing. Following the State of the Province address this month, we spoke to some of the MECs on the developments within their respective departments.
The biggest progress is that we've completed phase 1 of the Gauteng, and as the Premier has announced today, we're going to be launching the second phase of the Gauteng. The feasibility report is now completed. It will be almost double the size of the current phase, and later in the week we'll make a formal announcement of the phases, the various areas, and what over what time period we're looking at the expansion. Of course, it's a multi-term project. It's not going to be completed in 5 years, but certainly that's the most exciting thing. The second important thing is really our work with the municipalities, is the rollout of the bus rapid transit systems. The pace is just too slow. Joburg has got phases 1 and 2 up and running, a small portion in Tshwane, and of course in Ekurhuleni nothing has really started. They're still rolling out the infrastructure. So from our side, we would really like to see the pace of the infrastructure rollout speeded up. 2, that the systems need to be up and running as soon as possible. So the negotiations with the taxi industry should be concluded as soon as possible, because people really want to see a fully developed, integrated public transport system. So those are the 2 big things. 3, we will be building a completely new freeway in Gauteng. It's called the PWV15. This will not be tolled. We've made a clear policy decision that we're not going to go for the tolling option. PWV15 was part of the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project, was part of the proposed toll network. But I think in view of the controversy around e-tolling, we've made a decision. So that project will be launched in this term, certainly in this term, but it will take a bit longer to complete because we don't have private sector funding for it.
Your department has made quite a move or a shift towards eco-mobility and green mobility. What progress has been made in that regard?
I think the biggest progress has really been in the acquisition of the new buses that the various municipalities are procuring for the BRT systems. Some of them have gone for dual hybrid model, which is both gas and fuel. Others are going for Euro 5, Euro 6 compliant vehicles, which are really top of the range, very low carbon emissions. So that's a very positive sign. We're pushing non-motorized transport and cycling very strongly. We're very pleased that cycling as a recreational facility is really on the increase in our province, but we want to make sure that it becomes a means of mobility. More and more people, particularly for short distances, if we can get them to make a modal shift from, say, car usage to cycling for short distances, it will be, I think, make a huge contribution. And then, of course, the Gauteng phase 1, we now have a ridership of 63,000 passengers a day. That means 63,000 people are not using cars. So it's a major contribution for us. And of course, once we get the second phase up and running, we think we will take off another, possibly 100,000 people off the roads.
You mentioned cycling, but we've heard Mayor Mashaba saying he wants to do away with the cycle lanes. How is Gauteng provincial government collaborating with the local municipalities towards this single vision of the TMR strategy?
I think Mayor Mashaba made an on-the-spur sort of announcement. My sense is that the city of Joburg still remains committed to non-motorized transport and cycling. I think they're having a rethink. Certainly they've had some funding from the various German development organizations. They've indicated they would want to retain that funding. So my sense is that cycling will still be very much part of the city of Johannesburg.
In terms of the Premier's speech that we heard today, did it meet your expectations?
I think it's been a very comprehensive speech, covering a wide range of all the government departments, but also issues confronting ordinary people. It's been an honest appraisal of our work, where we've made mistakes like around the psychiatric patients, etc. It's important to acknowledge that mistakes were made. And it's important that the Premier takes personal responsibility for that, accountability for that, apologizes to the people of our province, and then makes a commitment that those mistakes will not be repeated. So I think the frankness, the honesty is important. That's what government should be doing. They should be more sensitive to the concerns of ordinary citizens, and they should be more responsive to their needs and to their cries.
In terms of harnessing previously disadvantaged communities and townships into your department, into doing the work, what progress has been made in that regard?
Well, the National Treasury has made a policy decision that as of the 1st of April, all major contracts, at least 1/3, should be going to small contractors. We've been implementing that already for the last 2 years. Most of our contracts, at least 35% to 40%, goes to local contractors. We're running some very, very big projects. I mean, our road construction and maintenance amounts are going to in excess of 2.5 billion rands annually. All of those major contracts, we get local contractors involved, local labor involved. That's a precondition for any successful tender in our department. And I think we've really benefited a lot of small operators in various townships. From G-Fleet side, which is the government garage, we're making sure now that some of the repairs to the vehicles, that is now going to small maintenance and repair outfits in the townships. It's important to build that capacity. From the fueling side, for G-Fleet, we don't have any preferred fuel suppliers. Various departments have been given fuel cards. They can fill anywhere. A lot of them are, because they reside in the townships and they're using the vehicle, they will be filling their fuel, doing their routine maintenance, small-scale repairs to tires, windscreens, etc. will be down in the township. So I think we're taking this thing quite seriously. Of course, there's always room for expansion. As the Premier indicated, I mean, we can't have a situation where small operators or small businesses are entirely dependent on government businesses. They're not sustainable. It doesn't mean you'll get a tender over and over again. The important thing is to make sure that they are able to sustain themselves with business from the private sector. That's how you build and grow a sustainable business.
I think that's excellent speech and very comprehensive. I'm particularly happy that he spent a bit of time looking at youth unemployment and the measures that we are taking in that regard. The program at SEPO 500,000 in partnership with the private sector and other institutions. I think that program is moving forward very well. But he's also indicated that we will also be implementing mega projects in the housing arena. which we'll announce later in the week, building of new roads, the extension of Gauteng, building new hospitals and clinics and schools. All these facilities, as they are implemented, that during construction will bring a lot of employment to communities. But he also took time to explain that we will overhaul the health system to ensure critical care to all our patients, including particularly the mental health patients, that he is now implementing those remedial actions. The new MEC, Dr. Gauteng Makhura, is leading the process now. People are being returned to institutions that have proper care and that they'll be removed from NGOs. So we are very happy that this matter is going to be given special attention and will be resolved to the satisfaction not only of us as government but of the families. The Premier continues to engage with the families, is working with everybody. So I'm definitely happy. I think as the ANC, we believe the Premier is doing an excellent job.
One of Gauteng's biggest challenges is rapid urbanization or inward migration. How is your department dealing with it in terms of human settlements?
Well, that remains our big challenge because, as you know, more than 200,000 people come here every year. The program of mega cities is going to help us because it gives various topologies of housing. You've got rental stock, you have bond houses, you've got your affordable housing. So you're catering for everybody. There will be those who don't qualify for our products. There's very little you can do about that. But to a large extent, we will cover as many South Africans as possible who are in Gauteng over the next coming years. We will be announcing later in the week where the mega projects are, but they are in all the corridors: Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, the Vaal in Sedibeng, the West Rand, and Tshwane as well. And hopefully those efforts will show that we are doing a lot of work to cover everybody.
What are some of the milestones from your department at this point in the administration?
Well, we are moving from legacy project to mega project. I think that's very important. In the mega project, we're also bringing private sector funding because with the money from the fiscus alone, we're not going to succeed. So we need to bring funding from the private sector through the Gauteng Partnership Fund. We will be having a funding summit next month to be able to look at how the private sector can come on board. And for me, I think that's a game changer because mega projects are huge projects. Most of them are 10 to 15,000 housing units with facilities, with shopping centers, with schools, hospitals, and many other commercial facilities. So it changes the way Gauteng looks. Most of them are on well-located sites. They are not in the periphery of cities. And for me, that's the right thing to do in changing the face of Gauteng.
What progress has been made in terms of resolving the issue of the title deeds in Gauteng, particularly when it comes to the 1994-1995 era?
Well, we now have a new team that is dealing with title deeds. We are following up particularly the old houses that were allocated to people a few years ago. We would clear most of those by next year, and then the new title deeds for new developments, we want to make sure that as soon as people are in the house within that particular year, they get their title deeds. So going forward, there will be no backlog in title deeds.
On next month's episode, we'll be unpacking Gauteng Finance MEC Barbara Creasy's budget speech as she allocates funds to carry out the targets set out in this year's State of the Province address. In the meantime, you can carry on the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #IOnGauteng.